Well, hello and welcome to another episode of the MARC Medley Show.
And Joseph said unto Pharaoh,
The dream of Pharaoh is one. God hath showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years. And the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do he showeth unto Pharaoh. Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt. And there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land. And the plenty shall not be known in the land by reason of that famine following, for it shall be very grievous. And for that the dream was doubled unto Pharaoh twice. It is because the thing is established by God, and God will shortly bring it to pass.
Well, as you can see, that opening was a little bit different than what you would normally get from me here on the MARC Medley Show. And if you don't know who you're listening to at this moment, this is your host, MARC Medley. And I started with that because that's out of the book of Genesis in the Bible. Matter of fact, to give credit where credit is due, I actually got that from the Bible.is app. That is a Bible that can actually read to you, so that if you don't feel like actually reading it yourself, it is an audio Bible. So you have the option of either reading it for yourself or you can listen to it in its audio format. And I chose that because this particular episode is dealing with what I feel that we are in 7 years of famine. Now, I don't know if the number is exactly exact, if you will, but it does seem like we are in what Joseph talked about there in terms of it being 7 good years of plenty, and then 7 years of famine. Now, again, maybe 7 is not the number during our particular time, but I can tell you what, the last couple of years since we've been dealing with this pandemic, it does seem like we have been in some years of famine. Now, the years prior to that, for most of us, probably were pretty good. I mean, some might say they were in famine years during that time period as well. But I can honestly and truly say, for me personally, the last couple of years have been just as Joseph predicted in terms of famine. Now, not in all areas, because the famine could be in different areas. It doesn't have to necessarily be financial. It doesn't have to be relational. It doesn't have to be health. But at the same time, it could be any one of those and above. Just take a look at what's going on around us. As I record this episode today, I just learned this morning that Russia invaded Ukraine. Now, after all the talks and everything of trying to discourage that from happening, yet it still occurred. And I know, again, biblically, it says we were going to have wars and rumors of wars. Well, I tell you what, that invasion on Ukraine is no longer a rumor. It is now leading us into a war. Again, if you look over these last couple of years since we've been dealing with this, because I know for me as the principal of a school, we released on March the 16th of 2020. And from that point, our students went into virtual mode, and we did not come back until September of 2021. And since that time, we've gone out a couple of weeks virtual as well. So the pandemic has really taken its toll on people. The suicide rate is higher than it's ever been. And not only suicides amongst older people, we're talking suicides for younger people. The example that I gave, and I usually give of late, is the 30-year-old beauty queen who jumped off of the building of 60 plus floors. And then on and on, you start getting celebrity children who are killing themselves. Celebrities, folks who have money, who are taking themselves out, folks who don't have money who are taking themselves out, and then just the losses. In terms of this pandemic, really, to me, in my mind, has influenced or exacerbated a lot of mental health issues. Folks who might have been struggling during the years of plenty, now that we are in the years of famine, really, it's coming to bear in terms of folks' mental capacities. Personally, and again, I honestly do not believe that human beings were designed to be isolated. Human beings were not designed to be socially distanced. Human beings were not designed not to be able to be around each other's energy, or to be able to hug each other and touch each other, or shake hands, or again, be in each other's space and sit next to each other, or be in each other's houses, or to go out to the theater, or to go to shopping, or to go in the mall, or to be in each other's cars. Human beings were not designed for that. And yet over the last couple of years, we have been so stratified. We have been so isolated, so separated. And not only have we been stratified and separated from each other as a country, we have become more and more polarized over the last years. Again, a part of the famine. We thought we had been making some progress in terms of race relations, in terms of human relations, and now we see once again that we're actually going the other way. We're actually becoming more and more polarized, more and more separated, compared with us coming closer and closer together. I started biblically. I started with something that was in the Bible, passage in the Bible in Genesis. And so since we started in the Bible, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit Bible, because a lot of this, again, in my view, truly is satanic, truly is demonic. Now, you can call it what you want it, but these spirits, these things that are going on are evil. I know those of us, we know how the theories of evil versus good, good versus evil. And at the end, we know good is going to win out. We know love is ultimately going to win. But right now, when you're going through it, we really have to have faith and trust to believe that that is going to happen in the end. We've seen the destruction of families. We've seen the destruction of marriages. We've seen the destruction of businesses. We've seen the destruction of educational and religious institutions. We've seen the destruction of, even in our political arena, the infighting. Folks that are supposed to be representing us for our good are down there fighting for folks not to be able to vote, are down there fighting for folks not to be able to have their best lives. That's what I mean by years of famine. 7 years, according to the story. Because that was the story of Joseph whenever he interprets the dream for Pharaoh. He's telling Pharaoh, what I'm seeing here, what God is giving me, is that there's going to be 7 years of plenty and then 7 years of famine. So during those 7 years of plenty, we need to store up. We need to store up so that you'll be able to have something during the 7 years of famine. So Joseph is letting Pharaoh know it's coming, those 7 years of famine. So you can enjoy now while the 7 years of plenty is here. But just know that the 7 years of famine is coming, and you need to be able to save and put something away for that time period. Well, I tell you what, I'm going to use that in terms of loving each other. It seems to me, out of all this time that we've been on the planet, human beings have been on the planet, it seems like we ought to have been like storing up love, because, they say you have your emotional bank account, you have your love bank account, and that it's built up by folks treating you right, you treating folks right, in your relationships, building that up, loving each other, so that when the rough times and the famine times do come, you would have something to lend. You would have something to pull out of your account. So in terms of, look at this from a monetary standpoint or a monetary point of view, you cannot pull out of a bank account what you have not put in. You cannot go to an automatic teller machine. You cannot go to the ATM and put your card in and expect to withdraw $100 if you have not put $100 or more into the account. It just does not work that way. Well, you know what? Relationships and love and everything works that way too. You cannot pull out what you have not put in. You cannot take out from the bank account of love what you have not put in. love. You cannot pull out from the bank account of kindness what you have not put into the bank account of kindness. You cannot pull out of the bank account of being able to pull anything out that has not been put in. And yet that's what we try to do. Right now with race relations, we don't have anything to pull back on. We don't have anything to pull out of because now we have withdrawn so much in terms of race relations that we have nothing to pull back on. That's why you have folks that are treating other folks again, because historically this is not the first time it's happened, but again, based on the color of his or her skin. We have riots and shootings and folks being killed for no other reason than their skin is dark. Again, that bank again is going bankrupt yet one more time. I don't know if we are doing the 7 year thing, but I do know it seems like we are in famine times. It seems like families and individuals are suffering more loss than ever. And the loss does not necessarily always have to be in material things. See, that's part of our problem too. We are so focused all the time on material things such as houses and cars and money and businesses. We are so focused on LLCs and so focused on all these things that we're forgetting that there's a human element to this thing. There's a spirit element to this thing. There is just being nice to your fellow human being because he or she is a human being. We keep forgetting that. We think that materialism, we think that material toys is what really matters, when the truth of the matter is material toys really don't matter in the grand scheme of things. We have yet to learn that, and yet we constantly trying to acquire all these accoutrements. Our focus is always on acquiring the accoutrements. Even with our kids, I see it every day in school. Their focus is on who has the most expensive Jordans, who has the most expensive this. I know I wear some jewelry around my neck. I have a couple of pieces that are actually real gold, and there's a couple of mixed fake gold in there. And I also have some silver and some pewter. And I'll walk into a classroom, and one of the first questions I'll get out of a student is, Mr. Medley, how much did that necklace cost? See, they're so worried about being able to have something on them that's expensive, compared with putting something that really matters in their minds. And now that comes up not even as a child, but now that goes on into adulthood. That the only thing that you're concerned with is how much material things can I acquire. So sometimes we get into what Joseph described as these years of famine, where folks start losing things. When we start all the things that we've gained and thought we was all that in a bag of chips, we start losing. And now we have to go back and reset. We have to go back and refocus. We have to go back and rethink some stuff, because we start finding out that the material things aren't doing it for us. We start finding out that the Porsche didn't do it for me. We start finding out that the 50,000 bedroom house didn't do it for me. We start finding that out. And then we get a chance to go back. Because see, that's where those 7 years of feast and the 7 years of famine, the 7 years of plenty, and the 7 years of loss, that's where it came. It made some folks think about some things. Because if you look in the story of Joseph, you see how his brothers, now the same brothers who had betrayed him and put him in a pit, you see now those same brothers ultimately had to come back to him. And they didn't even realize that was their brother. The same brothers that had betrayed Joseph in such a way now had to come to Joseph to save their own lives during the time of famine. Again, if you go in Genesis, I believe it's 37 through 50, 37 through 49, I think it's 37 through 50. You'll see the story of Joseph. I love the story because it has so many messages in there. But one of the messages in there is this whole notion of there are going to be good times, there are going to be bad times. There's going to be feast times, there's going to be famine times. in my view, based on our experience of everything that we're going on, the mental illness, the suicide rates, the wars, the having to not be around each other, not touch each other, not hug each other, having to wear masks, having to be vaccinated and then boosters on top of the vaccination, and then we're fighting about that. Because again, with this particular pandemic, this is not the first time that we've had a health issue. But because we turned this particular illness into a political issue, that's why you had all this infighting on whether or not folks ought to be vaccinated or not. Again, the politicians that's supposed to be looking out for our well-being was actually arguing whether or not a vaccination that was created for our well-being ought to be taken or not. This is where we're dealing with. That's why, in my mind's eye, I could be totally wrong. You can agree or disagree with this particular episode of the Mark Medley Show if you choose to. But in my mind, we are in some years of famine here. If you go back biblically, again, Joseph talks about that dream. That dream said we were going to have years of plenty and we're going to have years of famine or years of loss. It just seems to me, particularly since 2019, 2020, it has been years of loss. I will say this though, do not lose hope. And this message is not just for you, it's for me as well. Do not lose hope, because in all my years on the planet, to be honest with you, I've never seen or experienced anything like what I have seen over the last 2 years or experienced over the last 2 years. I will leave you this though. Do pray, do keep the faith, do trust. I have on my screensaver, if you are praying about it, God is working on it. So with that being said, thank you so much. If you've listened this far to this episode of the Mark Medley Show, please visit my website, markamedley.com. That's MARCAMEDLEY.com. Just about anything you want to know about me is there. All of my links, all of my social media sites, more information about my radio show, because this is the podcast. The radio show is The Reading Circle with Mark Medley, and that's broadcast live each Saturday morning from 6 o'clock a.m. to 9 o'clock a.m. on gobrave.org, GOBRAVE.org. Again, from 6 to 9 a.m. on Saturday mornings in the northern New Jersey, New York area, where we have 2.5 million listeners, or the potential for it. It is on 88.7 FM radio. So we have the podcast, which is the Mark Medley Show. And then we have my radio show, which is The Reading Circle with Mark Medley. And we have my blog, which is The Critical Thinker. I write on LinkedIn, and I also write in medium.com. So I'm all over the place. And again, I thank you so much for your attention. Continue to do what you do. As I said, have the faith, keep the faith. In the words of Reverend Dr. Adam Clayton Powell Jr., keep the faith, baby. I know that's right.